Do you know how powerful you are?
Welcome to Rise Urban Nation.
Welcome everybody to Rise Urban Nation.
Reshaping and elevating your mindset to help you achieve what you believe.
Sometimes we don't even see our own greatness. You can't be what you can't see.
And connecting Black cultures to build a community of talent and success.
Black people need to realize that they are assets. You are an asset.
When we rise, you rise.
Come together as a group.
This is Rise Urban Nation with Terrell Simmons.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. Your host Terrell Simmons here. This episode right here, this brother Rasool from I believe he's in Atlanta, Georgia. Last time I spoke to him, but man, he's an amazing brother. He's just hyper focused on bringing value to the freelance marketplace and business for startups, small, medium-sized businesses, and any skilled individuals who just really have the ability of earning money and freelancing. I can't wait for you to hear from him. 20-year technologist, Fintech, Fortune 500 VP, business author, founder, freelancing.com. So, which is a wonderful website just to really help freelancers, just be free and bring their skills to the marketplace. And it's one of the fastest growing freelancing platforms out there. So without further ado, let me give it up for Rasool.
Yeah. With the boys, you could be a bit more, you don't have that same, forgiving, very soft energy. It's like, get up and get it done. There's no excuses. But with the girl is at least me. Maybe I'm old fashioned. Maybe
you
whatever
exactly
it
right.
is. But I was afraid of that, and it happened.
That happens to me on several occasions. I'm like, well, what did your mama say?
Yeah. Can I get some backup somewhere? Don't put it all on me.
What did your mama say?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. But it's all great. I wouldn't trade it for anything. For my oldest, always thinking about the previous phase. So you got the infant, then you got the toddler, then you got as they progress forward, and you're like, man, I remember when she was just crawling, or man, I remember when she was running around and could barely walk. And I used to find myself almost, reminiscing a little bit too hard on the previous phase, but there's beauty in every phase.
Yeah.
And so if you appreciate the beauty in every phase, I mean, there's just so much in every phase that is just overwhelmingly powerful, and you appreciate the phase you're in.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned. I mean, from 4, you kind of learn your way along, and it just made it so much easier and so much better, as opposed to always thinking back, man, I remember when she's growing up too fast. I remember when she was just in my arms and I was just looking, you get sad. I mean, it's still going to happen a little bit.
It still happen, because we was just doing that the other day. Funny you mentioned that. Was looking at little pictures of her and her as a 2-year-old with the little bow-legged legs and her personality,
all of that. Yeah. It's going to happen regardless. So
I guess that's why they call the present a present.
The present is the present. That's right.
That's right.
So you just,
be present with your present. Yeah,
that's right. Just be present. Be present in the moment, and you won't miss anything. So
exactly. So all right, I got everything set up now. How do I pronounce your first name? It's Rasool. Rasool. And how do you say your last name?
Muttalib.
Where's that from?
It's Arabic. Yeah, it's an Arabic name. You could say partly African. So my father was very conscious, very much. He was a little bit ahead of his time, I would say. Right. And he actually paid when I graduated from high school way back, 300 years ago. He actually got me into a university over there, and I was able to go over there for 1 year and study in a university. And this is back in the 90s before a lot of people were doing that. So he gave me that name, and it always stands out. I'm always usually the only one with that name in the school or in the class or in the company. So it just makes it easy.
My stepdad, who I look up to, is I don't put the stepdad label on him. He's from Nigeria. So I grew up with a lot of, values from, African and Nigerian culture. So it was an experience for me too growing up.
Yeah, no, that's great. For me, it just because you're going to grow up here regardless. But when you have something else to broaden your perspective on things, and you see things, and it makes your worldview a bit broader. For me, it did. And so as you go, through life, you go to college, you're meeting different types of people. It allows you to understand things, much easier, as opposed to going through the judgment filter and then you don't understand it. And then it's like, well, why you do it like that? It just really broadened my perspective on a lot of different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I started to maneuver in life, I get more broadening my perspective of just so many different amazing, Black people's creatives, entrepreneurs in different spaces that I had no idea we were in spaces. I was like, man, like after working with different school systems to talk to our youth and the very limiting beliefs we have, not even just our youth, adults and sometimes in Black culture of what we could do, what we could be, or like the limits we put on ourselves. I was like, look, we got to start to see ourselves differently. And so let me interview all these amazing people that are just doing different things in their spaces. So hopefully somebody can see themselves in that person, and then that will broaden their perspective.
That's really powerful. That's really powerful. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's jump into this thing. Welcome to another episode of Risepreneurs. All right, let me get the name one more time for the people.
Rasool Muttalib.
Rasool. I had to have him say it because I didn't want to jag it up. I wanted to make sure we get that Rasool in there. I don't know why I think when you say your name, I think of Razzcast and rappers from that era that had those unique names.
Well, I would love to be able to follow in their footsteps in certain regards of just standing out and making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take it back. Tell me about, and you can take this question as far as and as wide as you want, or as deep as you want, or keep it surface. Who is Rasool?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a great question. Is as you probably heard many times when you ask that question, the book is not finished, so it's an evolving answer. Right now, just a brief bio. So originally from Cleveland, Ohio, grew up there, Cleveland Heights, and came down to Atlanta for college. And after my first winter in Atlanta, there were a lot of things outside of that. But after my first winter in Atlanta, I distinctly remember being outside. It was like a February, which, in Cleveland is just horrible at that time of the year. And I called my father on the phone. I had my mountain bike. I was in school up at the AUC, and I was getting ready to go for a bike ride. And I just called him to see what was going on. And he was like, well, what are you doing? I said, yeah, I'm getting ready to go for a ride. It's beautiful outside. It's like 70 some degrees. And I had completely forgotten, that it was February. And then there was this awkward silence on the phone. And he says, well, thanks for telling me that. It's 16 below zero up here. There's about 13 inches of snow on the ground. So thanks for rubbing it in my face that is almost 80 degrees. You go and at that moment it hit me that I'm like, oh yeah, it is February. And I said, man, I'm never going back. I'm never going back to Cleveland. But so I came down to Atlanta. Just so much opportunity in Atlanta, and it became my home. Got into technology. I've been in technology for roughly 20 years now. Started at the literal bottom and, worked my way up to become a vice president, one of the largest fintechs in the world. And, then after doing that, just decided to take all that experience and start my own, platform, which is freelancing.com, which is quickly becoming one of the fastest growing freelancing platforms available. So, there's so much to unpack. I mean, I love to read. I am a aspiring triathlete and, father of four. So, and a husband. So, all of that is there.
Yeah, you gotta be a triathlete with being a husband of four, chasing all them kids.
I never thought of it like that, but that is so true. I have the endurance to win.
Yeah, there
That's
you
right.
go. There you go.
That's right.
I just love your whole journey and your story. I'm gonna have to come out there in Atlanta because people tell me Atlanta is where it's at. Yeah, it's like the new Black Hollywood.
So much going on. I mean, you see them shooting movies all downtown and all different places at the malls and in the suburban neighborhoods and etc. And the movie thing is relatively new. It wasn't like that, I would say 5 years ago, but now
Really?
it's everywhere. So many apartment
Mm,
complexes being built. Technology is exploding in Atlanta right now. You have
right.
Microsoft here, Google's here, Amazon is here. I mean, just so many different the startup culture is exploding. There's just a lot
Right.
going on in Atlanta right now.
Yeah. So now let's go back to beginning. How did you get into the tech space? I often feel, and you can answer this part two of the question is like, do you feel like tech is one of the few industries that where we as people of color could like really thrive and uplift and build our communities? Well, first part, tech. How'd you get into tech? And then
Well,
we'll get to that
that
second
second
part.
question you had, I can't wait to get to that one because that's a really good one. How I got into technology, I'll be honest with you, there was a gold rush. I would say
Mhm.
early 2000s. There were, the companies, websites, the internet, everything was new at that. So imagine, everything was new. Companies didn't even have websites. And so I started freelancing, designing and building websites. And, one thing led to another. And the gold rush part of it was there were not enough people to help these companies build out their infrastructure, build out their websites, build out their networks. So you could just go get a certification. And with one certification and no experience, you can get a job for $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, and even more than that.
Wow.
So this is back in the 2000s. So that money back then was even, more significant than it is today. So, I jumped in, and with the experience doing websites, I went on a tear for about 7 years where I said, I'm going to learn one new technology every single year. And so these books are 600 pages, 700 pages long. I would just roll through them, take these virtual labs, take the exam, get the certification. And I began working that way. And so over the years, I started to expand into business certifications as well. You have Six Sigma, you have ITIL, you have Agile, you have all these different frameworks that, will allow you to manage these technical resources. So, all those things combined, that's why my career accelerated so quickly, was because I had the business acumen, and now you have the technology to go along with it. Normally in tech, you have technologists that don't understand business, or you have business people that don't understand technology. And so I had both, and it just always created this niche where I was dealing with major initiatives. I would always get asked to do these giant projects. And so my career just expanded and accelerated very quickly. But that's how I got into it. It was just a gold rush in the beginning. It was a quick way to get a career going without starting, trying to work your way up from $10 an hour and, that kind of thing.
I love that. I love that, which kind of alludes to the second question. But one thing before we get into that, like, you're like a dual threat. I say that because you're absolutely right, because I'm late getting into the tech game. I want to pitch that competition with Google and Techstars probably like 3 years ago. Yeah. But I had more of the business acumen because I did a lot of business stuff, set up, workforce development programs. So my mindset was business. And then when they got me in there, I started to get, learn, how these tech people operate and talk, which is a different language, and they have a different view, which is not always business related. And then I also bring culturally, when diversity, equity, inclusion is on the forefront, like having all the frameworks from working in different communities, they're not normally working with or working in, to how to mirror technology and business and all that to fit, those different groups. Now, to say that, what's your take on, when you look at how you were able to, fast track, level up your career using tech? What is your thoughts on can tech be this platform to really elevate not only our communities, but just, people of color in general?
Yeah. So over the top of that question, I would say, I think unequivocally it can elevate, but I will say that it has probably gotten both narrow and wider, more narrow and more wide at the same time. More narrow because it is much more competitive inside of companies and et cetera, where normally you have to get your start. It is much more competitive from the perspective of, like I said, when I started, there was a gold rush. There just weren't enough people. So companies, if you got a certification, they would just grab you and put you in a seat because there weren't enough people to go around. The market has become so international now, where hiring, it's interesting because there was this mass rush to India, where a lot of the technology jobs went there, and but other countries caught on to that and started to put technology into their curriculums as well. So then it went to the Pacific Rim, like Malaysia and the Philippines started to get it. And then it went to, there's a lot of Caucasus, like, Czechoslovakia got into, those types of countries. And even now, believe it or not, there are major technology companies in Latin America, in Costa Rica,
really?
just off the shore. And because they have infused it into their school curriculums, so now the kids coming out from college, they're not just coming out with general sciences degrees. They're coming out, with very specific skill sets that can go straight into the job market, and companies are going there now. So, people who, whether you're Black or whatever color you are in the United States, when they come out into the industry now, you have to be a bit more aggressive. You have to be a bit more specialized. You have to leverage relationships. You have to try to get internships, the old school way that you had to get a job back in the day, because it's not just as easy to get in. So that's how it's become more narrow. It's just much more competitive, and companies are going to a much broader set of marketplaces to get people. But I say it's become wider because with the expansion of technology and the internet and social media, there are so many different avenues where young people without college degrees can make money, create revenue for themselves, start businesses, go into these startup incubators, as like you mentioned, have a great idea, huddle up with some friends, whether it's in the same city or in multiple cities. You can hire people internationally as an individual to work on your project and help you. So if you understand how to navigate as a younger person right now, the job route is not as easy, but you have this whole other space that is opened up. So it kind of offsets it a little bit, where you're not completely dependent on getting a job. You can actually start something and make just as much money nowadays. So it's gotten both narrow and wide at the same time.
Yeah, it's almost like you're being entrepreneurial about your career now. Like,
that's right.
You treat your 9-to-5 as a contract while you build your side hustle or something like that, or build your portfolio so you can get into the next.
You know what? I'm gonna. When you said that, it struck a thought in my mind that I wasn't thinking about before, but it almost reminds me of professional athletes and even rappers and musicians in general. Whereas I would say prior to the hip hop era, musicians were just musicians. I want to get a record deal, and I hope they treat me right, and hopefully I'll make some money along the way with my art. And then professional athletes were just athletes. I want to make it to the pros. I hope that I make some money. Maybe I save it or I don't, and then I'll just be a basketball player. All of those industries and those people have transitioned into, I'm not just, as Jay-Z said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman.
Businessman.
That changed everything. And so you have professional athletes that, they understand their value. And you have, musicians now, they understand their value. And so that's where that whole 360 deal came in that people rejected. I think the same thing is happening in the regular career space, where people are like, well, I don't want to be wholly committed to a company. I want to develop my brand and my own personal things going on. And it's just interesting how you said that. It just made me think of that. I think the parallels are directly there, between all three of those things. And it's all good. I think it's great. I think it's great for the industry.
Yeah, I do. I love, because when you gave your intro and I saw how you transitioned to your career, and we'll dive into that in a second. I felt like, I don't know if you intentionally meant to do it. You kind of, you treated your career and brand as a business, how you got in, how you moved up the ladder, and then you did an exit, just kind of like, you know, you do a startup. You come in, you build that startup, and then you do your seed round funding, and then you exit the company, because it was never the goal to stay there for the whole long haul.
That right? Is a great point. And I hadn't put it like that in my mind, but it's certainly true. A lot of people, some people look down on jobs and careers, you know, now it's like, no, if you look at it the right way, it can be like graduate school. There are things that I learned because essentially I'm running a large technology organization, which is basically a company. I deal with financials. I have run rates. I have staff. I'm aggregating all these different technical disciplines around very singular goals and objectives. I have to measure them. I'm responsible for P&L. You know, you have to deal with leadership. You have to know how to lead people. You're dealing with clients. I mean, you're doing all of these things inside of a company per se, and it can be just training. And that's kind of how I looked at it. And now once you feel ready, it's like, all right, I need to go and take all this and just, you know, I've learned enough. It's time to jump out of the nest and do what I have to do. And that's where I'm at right now.
I'm curious, what was your first job?
Oh, wow. So this is taking me back a little bit. Surprisingly, my first job was a job that I created with a friend of mine, and we had a landscaping company, and it wasn't like cutting the grass of just. We had the whole neighborhood, and so what we did was we got some typing paper, because it wasn't printer paper back then, because nobody had any printers. It was just typing paper, and we cut it in half. We cut maybe almost a whole deck in half. And we sat there one Saturday morning and we hand wrote these flyers, and we had our company name on it. We wrote our services, what we would do, and we wrote the price, and we wrote the phone number to call us. And we literally, you know, I lived in a classic suburban neighborhood that it looked like a grid. The streets were all parallel, and, you know, you had streets that cut across, you know, just like a standard grid. And we went from the top all the way to the bottom. He was on one side of the street, I was on the other side of the street, and we went from house to house, putting those flyers in like every single door. And I kid you not, before we got back to make some more flyers, we were already getting phone calls from people saying, "Can you come cut my grass?" And, you know, we did that all summer long. And, you know, at that time, you know, we were making like $50 a day. This is back in the 80s. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we would just ride our bikes up to the mall, go to the arcade, spend all the money on video games and, you know, Burger King. You know, I distinctly remember even back then, Burger King had a 2 Whoppers for $5 deal.
You ain't gonna see that. Oh, actually, no,
it came back. Yeah, it came back. They did that way back in the day, and that was the standard routine on a summer day. We get up early, we would knock out about 10 yards, and get on our bikes, ride them up to the mall, play video games, you know, for hours. Go get that 2 for $5 Whopper meal. Maybe go get some candy, some lemon heads or something, and then ride back home. And that was my first job. You know, we had the whole neighborhood basically locked down, and then after that, you know, more traditional jobs.
Yeah, I find it befitting that you started with an entrepreneurial spirit, creating your own job, and in your current stage in life, you went back to how it started. You created.
Yeah. Full circle.
Yeah. So like started from the bottom. Now we here right back.
Not right back.
But you know. Leveled up big time using the same model.
That's right. You know, sometimes, you know, a tiger lives and dies by his stripes. You can't fight who you are, you know. You got to be who you are, you know.
I love it. So now tell me the journey of starting this new company. How did that come to be?
Yeah, well, freelancing.com, the entire concept of freelancing, I started to conceptualize it last year. And, you know, as I'm thinking about, well, what can I be passionate about that I really want to do? and what does the market need? What does the marketplace need right now? And I just felt like, all the things we just talked about when we were talking about the industry getting narrow and wide at the same time, I felt like freelancing is something new in terms of, how it's being done through technology platforms today. It's still not very widely adopted. A lot of people still don't use it, I think, to the extent that they can. I'll say Black technologists and female technologists are still very much underrepresented on these platforms. And so it felt like, I could take that up as a mission to create a platform that is open to everybody, but that I could also, bring to our community and really try to push it. There's so many different forums for women. There's so many different forums for us. Really, bring it to those forums to raise the awareness that this is a way you could make really good money outside of your day job. And then I think with COVID, this was, I said last year, it was actually before that, because COVID came along after I was already going. And I think that really accelerated the mindset of the people, because a lot of people lost their jobs abruptly, or they got their hours cut back. And it was like, well, what am I going to do to make some money? And then, the stimulus checks were good, but that's not something that is sustainable over time. So people, I think, really began to think very seriously about, it's more than a side hustle now. I need something else that I can do, maybe that I even enjoy, that I can make some serious money on, so that if I lose my primary source of income, I'm sustaining myself at least moderately or comfortably outside of that. And so I think it's just the right time for freelancing to really expand. And for me, timing is everything in the marketplace. So, that's what really caused me to launch this type of a platform right now, because I think the timing is now. Over the next, I would say 5 to 7 years, I believe that freelancing will become just as common as Uber or selling furniture on eBay. I think it, with the common people, and I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I find that to be happening too. I find, like, for certain industries like yours, COVID has been a wonderful time. While some people are having some lows, some industries are having highs, like your industry, and people getting that realization. What really sets you apart from, like, other platforms like the Fiverr and the Upwork?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So I think of it as, we are the Chick-fil-A to their McDonald's, Burger King.
Love that.
So, and with Freelancing, we place a very, very high focus on service, on the client experience, the customer experience. When you go to Chick-fil-A, everybody always smiles, even though that line is wrapped around the building almost 24 hours a day. That line moves very quickly. You're not waiting in line a long time. People are happy to help you. And so with some of these larger platforms, because it is so new, everybody doesn't know how to navigate that. And there are millions of people on there. And so it becomes very intimidating to someone who might want to, I have a business, I need somebody to develop my website. I don't know all the right questions to ask all the time, or I may want somebody to help me with my podcast, or I may have an idea for a mobile app. I don't know if I'm getting the right freelancer or not. And sometimes that can cause people to have a terrible experience, or they'll get ripped off. And so with Freelancing, we place a very high focus on very high touch, helping the client to make sure they get the right freelancer, ask the right questions. We have a concierge service that, we will manage a lot of that for you.
What?
Yeah.
Y'all got a concierge service? Oh, that's already an uptick right there.
Yeah. And it's all around that. It's all around making it easier for people to engage in that, because even for businesses, I think with COVID also, it's like you have your core set of employees, but you may not need a full-time web developer, right? Or you may have a certain project. You need somebody to build an Excel spreadsheet that does these formulas for you so you can track these types of expenses, and nobody in your staff knows how to do that. You're not going to hire a full-time person to do that. You need to be able to dip into a resource pool, get somebody that understands that thing, pay them an affordable rate, and then you have an ongoing relationship with them if you need it updated or, something like that. But it creates a certain level of flexibility for businesses that they haven't had before. And then for the people like you and me, who I might be good at Excel, how can I make some money with that? You can make money just being good at Excel. It creates an avenue for people to have extra income as well. So it's something I think that is really broadening our economy. And I think it's going to continue to do that.
Yeah. And I love that you're being focused on that because, as a small business owner myself, some of the things, the daily minute task of, running a podcast and a website, like I don't have time to like be doing all that. And I don't want to hire a full-time staff to do like one-off things, like you said. So your platform is definitely important and needed. And I know sometimes dealing with sites like Fiverr, it's a hit or miss. Like I tell people, like it's a hit or miss. Sometimes you might get somebody good. Sometimes you might get somebody that's trash. Yeah. You just wasted money.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. So that's really, you asked the difference. That's really how I just felt like there was a need for a smaller niche kind of boutique offering, that somebody that doesn't want to just jump into the jungle and just deal with all, there's millions of people on here, they feel much safer, to step into it. And there's more confidence they're going to get what they're actually trying to get out of it. And, establish an ongoing relationship with that individual, So yeah, it's turning out very, very well in a very short period of time. I have not put a ton into marketing and et cetera, but we have, thousands of freelancers that have already registered on the platform. And the response has been phenomenal so far. So it's going really good.
I love it. And your journey, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned in this journey of this, coming from your tech career and pivoting into this I want to say new path, because you started this way in life, but coming back to it in a grandiose way, what's some of the biggest lessons you learned?
Well, I mean, I'll say and this is going to sound cliche because you hear other people saying these things, but I'm telling you, it is so true. You have to trust timing. Trust timing. When you first set out to start your podcast, you probably had in mind, I want to have this up within 90 days and going. And then, something happened, this delay, that delay, or whatever it is. And you may have not started it in 90 days. Maybe you got it up in 6 months. But when you get it up in 6 months and you see the people that you've met, you see the space that you're in, certain things, you meet certain people, certain technologies and websites are available. You understand why you did it in 6 months. And you say, man, if I had done this, in 90 days, I would not have been as complete. So I think it's around trusting the timing. You got to be prepared for the marathon. It's not you see a lot of stuff on Instagram of, I made this product and put it on the internet and I got 100,000 orders in 2 days. That, I'm sure that happens sometimes. But that's not the normal experience. The normal experience is you got to be prepared to put in a ton of work for no return, and the returns will come later. But the grind and the consistency, to me, is where I see a lot of people falling off, is not understanding the amount of work it takes and amount of consistency you have to have in that work. You have to be almost maniacal in your conviction. So I mean, for me, I think that's the biggest lesson. Trust the timing and be prepared for the marathon.
I love it. The shout out to Nipsey, the late great Nipsey, who embedded the marathon in our mindsets in a different way. Because your career is so unique to you, and I know you're gonna inspire some people that's gonna listen to this, and they're like, all right, I want to get into tech and start a business like my man did. Like, what would you say, for those people who are listening to this, like, what were the key things or key steps that you took that helped you be successful up to this point to one, get a career in tech and then transition and then build, a business, a fintech business?
Well, I'll tell you one of the main things I think people overlook. And, I wrote a book back in 2016 because I knew I was wrapping up my career at that time. I'd accomplished my goals, and it was almost like, how in a master's degree program you have a capstone project. It was almost like that, writing a thesis. I felt it was like that. It's called What's Your Coffee Strategy? And I don't sell the book, but people buy it. It's on Amazon. People buy it. It's got good reviews. I don't really promote it because that's not really it's just not my thing. But it's all about relationships. And, what I find is a lot of people focus on learning the thing, or, starting the podcast, or in my case, launching the website, and then, trying to do some marketing on social media. You especially in a career, relationships are key, and identifying people who can help you, identifying where you can help others, identifying groups where you can add value, getting involved in certain groups and functions. You never know who you're going to meet in those functions. You never know what type of relationships you're going to build. And it's really those people and those relationships that open up channels that propel your career forward, and also, your business forward. And, I think that is one of the most overlooked areas of business and of career development. It's not all just about how smart you are, or that you have the right product. It's relationships are what really take it over the top. The reason why I called the book What's Your Coffee Strategy is, I just felt like in this time period, when you invite somebody for dinner, it's a much larger commitment of that person's time. And so people are much more reserved about a dinner invitation. Whereas if you say, hey, can we grab a cup of coffee? Let's meet at such and such a cafe. It's a much easier commitment on the other person's side, because a coffee conversation could be 10 minutes, or it could be 2 hours, just based upon how it flows. So it's much easier to get people of value to come and sit with you and have a conversation over coffee, as opposed to over dinner. So that's where the whole What's Your Coffee Strategy, that's how that came about. But I would say to answer your question, it's relationships.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of relationships as well. What's that old saying? It's not what you know. It's
who you know. It's who you know.
Yeah, it's who you know. It's who you know. I like to level it one more, because this is what I found in my career is it's who knows you. And a lot of people ask me, hey, Terrell, how did you get a meeting with such and such, or how did you get that contract? Well, they reached out to me. Well, how did they even know you? Oh, I did some work for this other person. They referred.
That's right.
Me, and then, they came. It's like, so you basically just getting all these jobs by word of mouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my name is starting to be mentioned in places my feet haven't even touched yet.
Wow. I like how you put that. Yeah, I like it. And that is true. I would agree with that. That is almost like the next level of that, or an extended level of that is people, but who knows you, and putting yourself in those situations where your name can carry forward. And that comes from, quality of work, being an authentic individual. People see that, people feel that, and they don't have a problem recommending you because they know what you're about, and that you're going to maintain their relationship. I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, but it all stems from those relationships. The relationship you built with that person, and they get to know you and your true authentic self. They're like, oh, you know what? I know he's good people. He's going to do right.
Yeah, he's going to treat you right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's some advice you would give to a young stud who wants to start their tech business like yours?
I would say, be prepared to go hard, and the only failure is quitting. As long as you keep going, you will win, and it may not happen as quickly as you think. And as we were talking about earlier, life happens, something comes in, you might lose a month, you might lose 2 months. The only failure is quitting. And, one of the things that I found is that, when you have a certain end point in mind, and you map out this plan that takes you straight there, and then you find yourself going all over the place, and it feels like you're zigzagging and you're just going here and there. But once you ultimately get to that point and you look backwards, it becomes clear to you that you were always going in a straight line. It's just that all those things had to happen to allow you to get to that point that you didn't know about. So, if I were to tell anybody anything starting out, that would be one of the biggest things is don't quit. The only failure is quitting. You just have to keep going. You got to keep meeting people. You have to keep working on your plan, working on your idea. Don't be afraid to pivot. If you need to pivot a little bit, a lot of people forget that YouTube started out as a dating platform, and
I did not know that.
Nobody was using it, and they were just about to close the doors, and they saw people beginning to post these random videos. I think one of the first one was like a plane crashing and just tumbling on the ground. And somebody posted a family video. It was not intended for that in the beginning, and they saw people viewing it. So they said, well, maybe the dating platform, maybe we just make it a general video sharing service. And so they pivoted to that. And, obviously, the rest is history. So you may have a concept that you think should be one way, but the marketplace says they want to use it for something else, or they want to do something else with it. Don't be so rigid in trying to force the marketplace to do what you want to do. BlackBerry learned that the hard way. They had almost 100% market share on mobile phones, and now they don't exist, which is almost impossible to do. And the whole point was they didn't want to follow the iPhone in making a larger screen. They wanted to have the little roller ball on there. And so people didn't want that. And so they just stopped buying it. So, don't be afraid to pivot. But the biggest thing is, just don't quit.
Yeah. That's so sad. BlackBerry. Like, there's a lot of cell phone companies I can think of, like BlackBerry, Nokia. Remember, I don't know if you remember the Nokias. Remember the old Motorola flip phones, the StarTAC. That at one point that was what the market wanted.
Yep. We had the two-way pager. You open it up and it was the thing right there.
Luckily Motorola's still around now, but I don't think that they're at the height of their success like they were back when.
No. Apple came in and blew everybody away, and it was obvious they were going to be the leader for a while. And you just needed to follow it. Don't try to reinvent it. Just follow it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a man of your caliber has a lot of many life lessons and gems you could share. What is one good life lesson? One good lesson life has taught you?
I mean, I think we hit on a couple of them that were important. But I think one even before we started the session, because we talked about not quitting, we talked about consistency, we talked about work ethic, we talked about all those things. One of the things that I would say is, also knowledge, reading, mastering your craft, exposing yourself. I read everything. I have a personal library. I used to read probably 20 books a year. Woo! And so I don't have time to do that anymore. But at one point, I was just about to ask you, how do you do that with 4 kids? No. That was back in my glory day. You have more of your calendar time and all that stuff. But what I would tell you is having awareness of, you may not be able to meet certain people, but you can have virtual mentors, right? You can, if you read their books, you understand how they think. You read books on business, you read books on philosophy, you read books on technology, you read, you broaden your profile. It allows you to solve problems better. It allows you to see solutions. It allows you to work your way through certain scenarios because you probably have read about how somebody did that in the past. So, I think reading is underrated, and it's kind of, we've all transitioned to just YouTube consumption and video consumption. Finding time to long form read, it's a very contemplative exercise. It resonates differently with, your thinking and thought process. And I think that is something that I like to see people do. I do it when I can still, but it's very helpful, knowledge, of different things of your industry and other industries. It's somebody that grew up on a street and they just stayed on that street their whole life versus somebody that's traveled around the world and they came back to that street. Those two people see the world in two entirely different ways. And one has a much broader view. The other one is just limited to that, what they've experienced on that block. So I would say reading and knowledge is something that people should focus on also.
Yeah, reading is fundamental, folks. There's a lot of knowledge in books that you may not get on YouTube and on all these web
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. So what do you think the future has in store for your industry?
I think it's going to grow exponentially. The freelancing, industry as a whole, a lot of people don't know, just last year contributed, close to $1 trillion to the economy.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it's massive, and I mean worldwide. But I do believe, like I think we mentioned it earlier, that freelancing will become extremely common for people, regular people that are not tech savvy, that don't develop websites. You might have somebody that could be an administrative assistant, a virtual assistant. And they log on, they have a couple of clients they work with, and they help them with emails. They help them with, typing up letters and answering the phone and things like. There are so many different things that you can do from a freelancing perspective. I also think it's a bridge. How many people went to school for something they love, but they're working in something that they don't love, that has nothing to do with what they went to school for. Freelancing gives you an opportunity to do that, while you still have your day job. So, from freelancing as a whole, as a concept and as a way to make money, I think is going to expand exponentially over the next 5 to 7 years. And of course, I want blancing.com, in our community and really in all areas to be a part of that expansion as it's happening.
As you were saying that, I was just formulating this thought of what we've experienced in COVID, the uncertainty of the job market. People in COVID got reset in a way where they had an epiphany or awakening or more time to reflect on themselves on what they want life to be like. And I think freelancing could allow people, I don't know if you feel this way, it could probably disrupt the regular 9 to 5.
I agree.
Because I no longer do I want to, spend, my 9 to 5 in the cubicle, because COVID has taught me that, life is short, life is precious, life, like the things that I want in life, I can achieve them now. I don't have to wait to retirement and slave away in a 9 to 5.
All of that. You hit the nail on the head. All the politics and all the other stuff aside, and COVID was a horrendous experience, and it still is. For a lot of people who are impacted from a health perspective, from a work perspective, I think is one of the biggest scientific experiments we've ever seen. And people, they realize I can close my laptop. I could be just as productive from home. But when I close my laptop, I can turn around and I can see my family. Or I can turn around and go right outside in my backyard and do my hobby. And so I don't want to go back to, a 2-hour commute, 8 hours a day, 1 hour commute home. I only have time to eat dinner and say hello to my kids, and then I got to go to sleep because I got to get up. People want, they tasted it now. And so everybody's evaluating options. A lot of people resigned from their positions because they didn't want to go back to that way of doing it. And I think companies are also catching up and offering more remote opportunities. But I still think you're absolutely right. People are going to say, hey, that's great. I'm going to look at that as one avenue that I can take. But I've got these other avenues where I can do things for myself via freelancing also. And so I need to evaluate all my options now, as opposed to just thinking about this one option over here, which is what we've traditionally thought about. I think the younger generation too, is they're coming into that as the default, whereas a lot of us are thinking it like, I need to transition into this way of thinking. They're coming into it as this is how I'm going to work. And so there's really no negotiation, which I think will push it even further. So yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I think freelancing is going to grow exponentially, just because of that, and people wanting the flexibility and do the things that they love and make more money also.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to see this transition. One thing I did forget to ask you, how did you come up with the name Blancing?
I had a whole bunch of names that, I was looking at. I wanted something that tied into freelancing. So you would kind of understand what it was. I didn't want to name it, nexus.com or something, because it's like, somebody heard that, they wouldn't think about freelancing. And so I went through this period of, be your best, be better, have or just to be great, be exceptional. And then it was like, okay, maybe be-lancing, maybe you should be freelancing, be-lancing, freelancing on be-lancing, all these different things started to come about. And the name just kind of stuck with me. I am not a branding and marketing expert by any stretch of the imagination. So,
but I like it. We be Lansing.
Yeah. There's probably some marketing company out there that's like, that's a terrible idea. But it resonated with me, and the people that I talked to, they also seemed to get it. So it just stuck.
I love it. So I hope, hopefully you don't change it. Hopefully it sticks around and resonates with more people. So, I feel like me and you could talk forever, but at some point we gotta end the interview. I like to keep it like short for a drive, if people are even driving these days. I don't know what the new routine or new norm is.
Still drive.
So this is usually around a good cutoff time for a driving routine. Okay. So let's end off like this. What projects are you currently working on, and where can people find you?
Belancing.com is the primary thing right now. I want everybody to freelance on belancing.com. You can go there. You can find contact information there. I'm also obviously on social media. You can find me on social media. My website is rasool.me, rasool.me. That's just my personal website. But go to belancing.com, register, sign up. If you do any of those things, websites, social media, graphic design, video production, go there and register. And if you need those things, go there and find quality people.
And all my Ricepreneurs people, I'm gonna put all this in the show notes below. So I'm gonna have Rasool email them. Make sure you support my brother. I'm actually about to go on there this weekend and see if I can get some good help.
I love it. For
some of the stuff I need done.
That's right.
Rasool, my brother, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Any last words for the people before we head out? No,
I just want to thank you for having me. I had a blast too. It's a great conversation. I feel like we could probably go for another hour and not even miss it. So thanks for having me on the show. I had a fun time.
Thank you. It's been another episode of Ricepreneurs, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Rise Urban Nation.
Thank you for taking the journey.
Be sure to like, comment, and smash that subscribe button. And stay connected with Terrell on and off the show. Follow at Rise Urban Nation on all platforms.
Do what you love what you do. Don't chase the money. Let the money chase you.